clearly the whole DEI debate has become increasingly polarized and politicized and frankly really disconnected from the starting point that I certainly had and many others working in this space have had, which is that actually having more diversity will improve thinking. It'll mitigate against the risk of groupthink, help you spot blind spots or be less vulnerable to blind spots. So we thought actually we need to go right back to basics and let's start again. And we instructed an academic, a very well-known academic, to do this research, but we said don't work back from the conclusion you might think we want to see because we're called the Diversity Project. Tell us what the evidence shows.
So in this case, the study was looking at cognitive diversity, but how do you really judge diversity of thought?
So it turns out there's been a lot of academic research which is covered in the study. There's a whole literature review that Professor Edmonds has included in the study. And you can measure it in all sorts of ways. I mean, really, we're defining it as broadly different ways of thinking. And of course, that is attributable to your different backgrounds. It might be related to your skill sets, your socioeconomic background. And there are obviously a lot of personality tests that measure so-called cognitive styles. So yes, it's a little bit harder to measure than someone's age or whether they're black or white, but there are ways in which you can measure it.
I suppose my question, though, and it is interesting that the research has been done, you've done it in such depth as well, but I think that the other side of it would be, is this basically the acceptable face of rejecting diversity, equity and inclusion? Because also the basis of DE&I is also to give underrepresented people access where they might not have. It's not just about kind of better for performance, it's about giving people who wouldn't have had a seat at the table a seat at the table.
And it's entirely compatible with that. So I am a great believer, obviously, in trying to correct underrepresentation and have more diverse people as well as diversity of thought. And what the research shows is actually that it can drive meritocracy. And of course, I suppose it's intuitive, really, that if you just hire from one type of group or one type of person, you can't produce the optimal team. And we saw that, obviously, in the global financial crisis. So this is actually saying that diversity drives meritocracy when what you're talking about is a team. And obviously most investment houses work around teams, not just one single individual calling all the shots.
I think the other issue also that I want to raise is that Europe has driven greater diversity through quotas in many ways, in political life, but also in business life. And Bloomberg's own gender equality scorecard, for example, only one measure of diversity, but gender equality scorecard, showing that actually Europe has got much more diverse boards, basically because, and you're the founder of the 30% Club, so I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but that has happened because of that. And the trickle-down numbers don't look so good in Europe, but actually the board seats are there because there's such a focus on getting it done. And if you don't have that, then it does disappear.
Yeah, so I completely still believe that targets can be really helpful because obviously you're measuring progress against specific diverse demographics. However, if you want to improve results, and this is where we're trying to unify the debate here, because clearly a lot of people are very skeptical. It's not just because of Trump's executive orders. We've always had eye rollers, people who are skeptical, people who told me 15 years ago when launched 30% Club, women have never had it so good. People have always been like that. And now what we're saying is instead of standing in two corners of a boxing ring, let's remember, yes, we happen to want better representation of those who haven't had a chance, but everybody wants the best teams, the best performance, the best outcomes for clients. And I think this research really does give an opportunity to reframe the debate away from, what has been contentious and seen, even if it was never intended to give preferential treatment to certain groupings. That's how some people see it.
And so I guess cynics might look at this and say, oh, you've commissioned research into cognitive diversity, and what a surprise you found that it's beneficial. But you've found more than that. There's some interesting points around the challenges of managing diverse teams and what businesses could and should be doing to make that work.
Definitely. So the headline really is you can't just add diversity then stir and expect better results. You get better results if you really manage and bring out to the fore those contributions of people whose voices might not have been heard in the past. So actually, going back to your point, Caroline, this is actually don't just recruit people from, say, a lower socioeconomic background and expect them to sort of thrive somehow by just fitting into the status quo. But a manager, a leader has to manage that very thoughtfully. And there's a lot in the report about how leaders can make a real difference here because there's a cost as well. If you get it wrong, people who are cognitively diverse, they haven't come from a similar background, say, or gone to the same school, they might struggle to communicate well. They might just speak different languages.
I mean, speaking of which, I think this goes to the conversation also about tech, around the growth of startup businesses. I mean, I was interested to read your piece because you were quite negative, actually, about the London's crown has gone, effectively, in terms of tech startups. And I'm interested to understand that you feel that it really is that bad.
Yeah, and obviously I say this sadly. I mean, I've spent a lot of my time, I was part of a fintech at one stage working with Legal & General on a new technology platform for them. I want London to succeed. So I'm not saying this because I in any way want to do the country down. But I do think we have been perhaps a bit complacent. And obviously some of the government's policies, including predecessor governments, have unfortunately sort of gone in the opposite direction. If you want the best talent to come and work here, you can't tax them at really high rates of personal tax. If you can't have a regulatory regime, I mean, Revolut, one of our top fintech companies, obviously took nearly 3 years to get a banking license. And of course, now they've just setting up a new headquarters in Paris. I mean, that's what's going to happen unless we have joined up policies and we don't just say, oh, we really want tech to thrive in this country, but we do things that would actually make that happen.
Do you think the government is realising that now, though, this government? I mean, they have focused much more, and they are looking at, for example, mandating that UK pension, or they haven't ruled out that UK pension funds should put funds into start-up and other kind of early stage businesses here in the UK. And that's kind of undoing the reforms to pensions that took place 20 years ago. And that would surely be a good thing, that mandatory element.
Wouldn't it be a shame that we have to make people invest in these prospects rather than actually feel they want to because they see the upside from an investment stance? I think it is quite controversial and difficult. What we need to do is make sure, and we have brilliant talent here still in the UK. I wrote in my article about Cambridge and Oxford having a lot of exciting things happening still. But clearly our economic policies are not designed to attract and retain the best and the brightest, and we still have a long way to go before the listing regime is appealing, before the regulatory regime encourages growth. So I'm just saying you can't just say you want great success here, and unless you make people do things, that's really not the way to create the best growth, the best entrepreneurship, and the most excitement about what the UK can achieve here.
I mean, I guess at the risk of striking a slightly optimistic tone, is the problem here really a sort of kind of a capital markets one, that depth of US market versus London and so forth? Because actually, Wise, yes, they're now going to be primarily listed in the US, but they were founded here, they did grow here. You've named a bunch of companies there, Revolut, so on. They are London success stories, even if they are then going on to seek, investment elsewhere outside of London.
Yes, no, scaling up has been a big, long-running problem for the UK. So I definitely think that's a big element of this. But really what I'm trying to say is, before it's too late, yes, our tech crown has slipped. We have Tech Week this week. It's a great moment to be talking about this. The government is putting out its plan around investment and strategy on the 15th of July, and there's a lot of high hopes for that. But it all has to add up to something that is genuinely going to make companies both want to start up here and then scale up here.
I suppose what's the one thing that government could really do? I mean, is it changing the visa rules? Everywhere they turn, there are such, strictures in terms of the budget and in terms of what they can do to deliver. They're looking to all sectors of society to try to deliver economic growth, but finance and tech as well. What can they do?
Well, nearly every company is almost a tech company these days, isn't it? So I don't think this is sort of peripheral to the main event. This is the main event. And of course, there isn't a silver bullet, but I do think our tax regime is detrimental to wealth creation. We've obviously seen a lot of people leave since the nom-dom rules were changed and announced. It's got to all be consistent. And I do think at the moment the government is, I'm sure, very genuine about wanting to encourage this. But there needs to be a proper, I hate the word project around this because it's much bigger than that. This is like a strategy. But it really has to work with business, I believe. That's what's perhaps been missing, that there's been a few forays into chatting to individual business people. But I mentioned in my article this thing that used to exist called the FSTIP. It's not a very glamorous title, is it? Financial Trade and Services Investment Board. And we had an ongoing discussion, a regular dialogue between business and the government. And that's what needs to happen here.